Outdoors with Tom Gruenwald is brought to you in part by HT Premium Ice Tackle and by Polar Fire, advanced cold weather clothing systems, and these other fine sponsors.
Mobridge, your all-season fishing destination.
Hello everybody and welcome to Tom Gruenwald Outdoors. I'm Tom Gruenwald. You know, late ice is a time of mixed emotion for me. As I watch that snow melt, I know another season's coming to an end. At the same time, it's also an excellent period to get out and get in some wonderful late ice panfish action. Today we're going to be joined by HT Pro staffers Steve Wiedmeyer and John Reddy, trying to go out and catch a few late ice crappies and a few late ice bluegills. Let's start out joining Steve, see how we can do over here on Big Cedar Lake. Oh, here comes one. He's coming up. He's coming up on me. Come on, fish. Come on. Yeah, he took. All right. Ah, it's a start. That's not a huge crappie, but that's probably the average size that we get out here. Just a nice eating size fish. And as is typical of our Mooska, just a nice hook right here. Oh yeah, that's what it's all about right there. We're trying to get ourselves a few crappies today. Nice fish. Whoa. We'll drop him in the bucket. I love eating panfish. Doesn't matter if it's bluegill, perch, crappie, especially this size. Those are just beautiful fillets. All right, the bigger technique, again, just a little more aggressive approach and bringing that bait up and just let that fish shoot up off the bottom and take it. That did the trick. We'll drop that one in the bucket, get rigged back up, see if we can go get another one.
Now the feeding period for these fish can come and go throughout the morning. It's not always sunup, it's not always late in the day. It can be mid-morning. We've got a cloud cover fog. They'll just get the urge to bite. It may run for short periods of an hour to 2 hours. Could be 15 minutes you'll see a good bite. You got to be ready for it. Moving from hole to hole, checking different depths, and as I said, maybe you want to go over a weed pocket for a while, just stay above it. These weeds are only about a foot up, but there are some green in them because this year we haven't had the snow cover. We surely don't have the ice depth. Right now, midwinter, get a little later in the season, we're still we only have about 18 inches of ice. So you're still getting the sun penetration, which is still going to keep these weeds green. Oh, there's one. There we got one. There we go. Oh, we got a little bluegill. There we go. We got a fish still. There's a sign of what's down here. Keeps the blood going, gets the adrenaline up, keeps your confidence going. Be a little careful with them. We'll get that hemostat underneath there and just take that out gently, and there he goes.
Watch, you'll see my lure come into the picture here. Right there, and then just above it, this unit's so powerful, it's picking up the barrel swivel. That's why you're seeing 2 marks dropping down. And again, we're in about 12 feet of water. There's a couple of fish there off the bottom. There's some smaller marks. We'll see if we can get one of these fish to come up. See the separation. Oh, there comes a fish. I'll tease him. Again, I'm working it up. See the red mark just below it? Well, we got several marks in there right now. A couple of them are smaller. Those might be some bluegills or perch. But those big red marks, that's a bigger fish. That's probably a crappie. Oh, here he comes. He's coming up. He's coming up. He's right on it. Come on, he's gonna work up. There he is. Yeah. Feels like another decent one. Yeah, that's another crappie. Yeah. There we go. Boy, this is just working like a charm now. Some of these low light conditions, this fog that we're having, it's just extending the morning bite just that much further. That's really helping out. It's what we were hoping for. Yeah, boy, if this could continue all morning, we could limit out. Who knows? Beautiful. This is fun. And some of these fish now are starting to come through a little higher too, which is a good sign. It usually makes them active. Okay, here we go. This is great. Starting to pile up now. I think we're getting onto something.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Hey, like I always say, nothing beats ice fishing. Nothing.
Well, John put us right on some fish out here. We've got about 5 feet of water, and boy, as soon as I put my jig down, I had a fish coming up on it. Worked them for a little bit. They're being very finicky. Got a real tiny, right now, a number 14 our Mooska jig on there with 2 little spikes. I'm using a half-pound test line. This is a heavily pressured body of water. And so you got to really lighten up if you want to try to get these guys. And even with that light gear, I've missed a couple fish. And I had one real nice one hit me, and I, of course, broke the line, which happens. That's one of the risks that you take when you use the real light gear like this, when you're really going finesse. But John did put us on a spot here. I'm marking fish fairly consistently. And it's just a matter now of trying to figure out exactly what type of jigging action I need to try to use. Sometimes just taking the rod and just kind of shaking it real gently like this and working the bait down and watching the line. If the line goes slack like that, that's your indicator that you got a fish on. And there's a little gill. That's a start. Look at him there. I know that one I had the first time was a whole lot bigger than that. Still, not a bad sized bluegill. And again, he just took that real tiny Mooska jig, and I was talking to John a little bit before we came out and set up, and he recommended that I try to use something that's a real natural looking color, because this is clear water and they're very fussy. And that's like a beige and red with a little glow tip on it. It looks funny. It's probably not the first thing when you go in the store that is going to catch your eye, but it is a very natural type color, similar to maybe a bloodworm. And I've just got 2 little spikes on the end of that. Now, one thing I always like to do with this light line, before I drop back down, I always like to check my knots. They do come loose a little bit once in a while. The line can be weakened after you catch a fish. I like to try to have that jig hanging as horizontally as I possibly can. And with all the weight of the spike, it's going to tilt down a little bit. Again, light system. It's a Polar Gold ultralight. Notice real light tip, but the action's at the tip here. Lots of backbone, so if I do catch a bigger fish, I can still get a hook set and bring the fish up. The smaller guides don't weigh down that tip too much. That works out real nice, helps me balance the system. And then I've got one of the HT AccuCast reels on here with the spool. So the line is lined up nicely to the stripper guide, adds a little bit of performance to the system. It's also got infinite anti-reverse, which we've talked about before on other shows. That means no matter what depth I stop, that reel locks in right at that spot. So I can have very precise depth control. I don't have to worry about that handle kicking back when I'm trying to get my positioning in the strike zone, or of course when I'm trying to get a good hook set. Let's go back down and see if we can get another one here. You got another one, John. These aren't too bad. They're picking up a little bit, some bigger fish now. Oh yeah, it's another nice one. There we go. Not quite as big as the last fish, but still a pretty nice bluegill. Whoa. Still coming right up on that hand side. These are just perfect eating size bluegills right here. Look at that. What a beautiful, nice bluegill that is.
Now this is kind of an old school method using a styrofoam or a balsa wood bobber on a rod. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll drop this down and just lay it in the water, but I tend to use this a little differently, especially on a windy day. Using the wind to your advantage is a good thing, especially when you're fishing with small jigs for panfish. Usually what I'll do when I'm fishing bluegill or crappie, I'm just starting below the ice and I'll slowly drop it. And I'm watching that bobber the whole time. When you get a little bit of wind, your bobber's moving, so that's actually giving the jig some action, even if you're holding it still. And what you're looking for is either you're gonna have slack in your line as you're going, or when the bobber stiffens up, just like this. It's a real good indicator you got a bite or a fish is grabbed onto your jig. I tend to use this late ice when the fish are coming into the shallow bay. Is not really a deep water tool, but late ice, when the fish are anywhere from below the ice to the bottom, you can work the column real effectively.
There we are. Oh yeah, another crappie. There you go. Almost a twin to the first one there. Now we're starting to get into them. That'll happen a lot of times during the winter time. Start seeing some crappies coming through. A lot of times they'll school up. You can get to them and start picking out 10 or 12 of those and you easily got yourself a nice fish fry. And they eat well. I love crappie. There we go. There we go. Oh yeah, this feels like a nicer fish. Got a little nicer one here, John. There we go, look at that. There we go. You talk about hand size. Well, that one right there is hand size. That's perfect. Beautiful fish. What's happening out here now is we're getting a little bit later in the day. Typically bluegills do tend to be a lot more active as you get toward the evening, as it gets darker. So I usually say after 2:30, 3 o'clock, it'll start getting a little better. Right now we're about 4 o'clock. Also these patchy clouds that have been moving through all day, a little more dense right now. So not only do we have lower light intensity because it's late afternoon, but we also got more cloud cover. That's going to be a good thing. We've been marking fish here all day long. John has put us on an awesome spot. It's just been a very finicky, difficult finesse type bite because of the conditions. And now with the cloud cover, I think we're going to be in a lot better shape. Hey, that was a lot of fun. Now we're going to pull away just for a second and show you a little technique that I love to use for panfish in the wintertime, especially if you've got a light bite, and that is using a spring bobber. Now we've got a few different models and styles that are out there that you can utilize. Today we're going to show you, first of all, a little EVA style coiled spring, and that actually has an EVA plug that slides into the tip top of the rod. The line comes out through the coiled spring. We also have another model called our Mooska spring bobber, which is more of a finesse, kind of a classic spring that we're going to show you how to rig up. And I'll tell you what, when you've got a light bite going, spring bobbers are really a way to feel and sense and see all of those strikes. And in addition, spring bobbers also help add a little bit of a nice, light, subtle rocking motion to your bait. So in addition to be able to help detect strikes better, they also add to your presentation. Let's go and take a look at a couple of these different springs. I'll show you how they work. I want to show you another spring bobber here that I use quite a bit. This is the Slab Master spring bobber that's made by HT Enterprises. And what's really nice about this, it fits right into the tip of the ice rod with a soft EVA foam clip, okay? So it just slides basically right into the rod tip like this. And it's about as easy as it gets when it comes to rigging a spring bobber. Bang, there it is. Of course, you gotta make sure that you run the line through this coil first. Now when you're putting this into the tip, the line of course is running through the center of the coil. When a fish bites, you just see it dip down, or from the weight of the lure, if it's bent and a fish grabs it, it might even come up with it. Just another super sensitive system that you can use for really detecting finicky, light biting fish. Of course, one of the most difficult things with these coil spring bobbers, and I hear this all the time when I'm talking to people, is, you know, it's so frustrating trying to put that line through those bobbers. That line, usually it's got a little bend to it or a tag on the end that wants to stick out. Well, you can take care of that by using this handy little spring bobber threader that HT makes. And what I do there, real simply, is I just take my line and I can run it through the threader here, just so it's between the two wires, okay? And then real easily, all I have to do is slip the line with the threader right into the handle and the spring. Now, what you do, run it through the hole here, just like so. And now I'm going to put the line through the loop like I just showed you. And then I can pull it right through and off you go. So I got that Slabmaster spring bobber all set up. Again, this is a little bit heavier rod. This is actually a medium light. But watch this now. I got a fish coming up. Watch that spring. See that nice light wiggle? Ooh, did you see that? He's hit it. There he is. Normally you wouldn't use a rod quite this heavy for fishing bluegills. But these are so big, it is nice to have the heavier rod and a little bit heavier line. You saw a couple times I had that line snap off, and now that they're getting more aggressive, I don't have to be that small and that thin. I can go with something a little bit heavier. I'd like to show you another style spring bobber. This is called the Mooska spring bobber, and of course most of the Mooska fishing is designed for ultralight finesse panfish type things, and the Mooska spring bobber is a part of that type of system. This is just an extremely fine flat wire spring bobber, and what's nice about it is it's just got a simple clip on, so it's so easy to put onto the rod tip. Doesn't get much easier than this, and most people of course like to fish their spring bobbers off the tip of the rod. This basically just snaps right onto the rod tip. Simple clip system, and then you take your line, of course, and run it through the grommet out at the end here, and then when a fish bites, you'll just see that spring drop down. Just real simple. Get all rigged up, and the fish have been going really good on this pink slim rat, tipped with a waxworm or two. So I'll rig that up and I'll show you how this spring works. But boy, I tell you, there's so many different spring bobbers on the market, it's hard to determine, which one is the best. You gotta just look and see what is the best for your type of fishing and your type of system. But again, this is just very, very, very sensitive for a flat wire spring, and that clip is about as simple as it gets. I'm gonna bait up and see if I catch a fish on this one. Let's give it a try. They're biting very light, but they're definitely down there. Again, just watch that spring. I'm watching for an interruption in my jigging rhythm. That's a fish if I see anything. Pops up, goes down like that. I know I got him. There we go. Instead of doing the traditional way of putting this spring on and putting it out here at the end, I'm actually going to clip it here on the side of the rod. And I'm going to show you why that is in a second. Now this works especially well when you're using a really light outfit, because you got a light rod tip and then you got that light spring on the end. It's hard to get a good solid hook set. But it works with any of these types of systems. What I'm doing is I'm running the line here. I'm going to come out through the second guide, and I'm going to bring it through the Mooska spring bobber, ram it in the end, then go back to the guides here. Now what happens is I can actually run this out, bend it out to the outside, and jig. And now what happens when a fish bites here is it simply brings that spring right back to the rod itself, okay? So there you can see it bent out. Now when a fish bites and that line goes tight, the spring just comes up against the rod. Again, an extremely sensitive light bite detection system, but now I've got nothing out at the end of the rod that's impeding my hook set. And that's especially important if I'm fishing for bigger fish or if I'm using, again, a really ultralight type rod where the tip is so light and then they have a light spring on the end. It's hard to get a good hook set. This way, I can actually pick it up. It's a little non-conformist way of fishing a spring bobber, but it really, really works well, and it's a tip that a lot of people, I think, should give a try. All right, now all we're doing is we're watching that spring again. Oh, there he is. I see that nice little motion that I'm jigging, and it comes up flat against the blank. That's the strike. Look at that. The Mooska spring bobber light bite detection system. Oh, does that work good? Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's show. There's really nothing more special than fishing late ice panfish. Again, it's that mixed emotion. You know the season is coming to a close. At the same time, you can enjoy some really nice weather and some really super action. I hope you've enjoyed this late ice outing and you've enjoyed this season here on Tom Gruenwald Outdoors. We look forward to seeing you again next year on Tom Gruenwald Outdoors. Remember, it's always ice fishing all the time.